Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at and when you're watching. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here at the 11th Annual Cybersecurity Summit. I love this year's theme, the power and peril of connection. The power, I think the greatest power of connection comes from us working together, comes from our community, putting our differences aside to solve some of the most difficult problems I think we've ever had in information security and cybersecurity. The peril, the bad part of this is we're adopting technology faster than our ability to secure it, faster than our ability to use it responsibly. And that's our challenge. So how do we figure out ways to use technology responsibly and do it together? So I love this year's theme. It's an honor to be here. I have a lot to cover, so we're just going to go ahead and get going. This is me, Evan Francen. The title of the talk is A Better Playbook for the Public Security Cyber Team. I'm going to introduce you to a new concept. It's called the Programmatic Distributed Empowerment for Information Security. I'm excited. This is the first time I've really introduced it publicly. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So reach out to me afterwards. Tell me what you think. Tell me, if you have ideas. Again, we're in this together. This is a community, and I'm looking forward to that. So again, let's build the community. Let's work together. This is me. This is what we're talking about. So about me, this isn't about ego. This is an obligatory slide. For some of you, you don't know me. You've never heard of me before. This, if you're going to believe what I tell you, I think I need to have some level of credibility. And I'm going to keep it short. I've been in this industry for a very long time, done a lot of things with many people, interesting stories. After the talk, if you want to hear any of those stories or share some of your own, again, let's reach out. Let's connect. But it's a little bit about me. Now I have a lot to cover. Really, I have 60 minutes worth of material to cover in 30. There are other speakers here that I really want you to focus on as well. So I want to be respectful of those other speakers and keep it to my 30 minutes, but I'm going to go fast. If you need to, you can watch this potentially on half speed or go back to the recording if there are pieces that you missed that you want to catch up on, but we are going to go fast. The introduction to Programmatic Distributed Empowerment of Information Security. This is not an in-depth examination of this construct. To do so would take longer than 30 minutes for sure. This is an introduction to the concept. And if you want more detail, you want to get deeper, we have technical guides that you can get, and we can go deeper. But here it's only going to be 30 minutes, and we're just going to introduce you. Now, there are 3 points that were made in the description of this talk. The first 2 really justify the third. The first point being information security isn't about information or security as much as it is about people. It's always about people. People are the ones who suffer when things go wrong, and people are generally the cause. Well, they are the cause of the things going wrong. So number 1, that point, absolutely, that's just a truth. Now, traditional approaches we take to information security leave, I think, all of us playing a game we can't win, but specifically, let's focus on the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer. They're playing a game they can't win. My heart goes out to so many of the CISOs who are playing this game because they work really, really hard. They take on a lot of responsibility, and I just think we've set them up to fail. So all of this sort of led to creating this construct, PDEIS. It's a method, I think, that can change the game, put us all in a position to win. It distributes the empowerment. We originally called it Programmatic Distributed Accountability for Information Security until we realized that nobody liked the word accountability. So we changed it to empowerment. Everybody likes empowerment without really realizing it implies accountability too. So PDEIS is what we're going to talk about. So traditional approaches, I want to dig a little bit deeper into what the traditional approaches to information security are. I want to define the game. I don't want to assume anything. I may know the game. You may know the game. Do they know the game? Also, I can't tell you how many times I've asked other CISOs to give me a definition of information security, and it's been different than mine. So, and it may seem like that's not a big deal, but we're playing different games. If we want to build that community and play the same game, we need to define what the game is and not assume that everybody just knows. So let's get into that really quick. The game is information security, and that's probably not a surprise to anybody. It's not like, oh, I never knew that. I never knew that that's what we were doing here. The game is information security, but like I said, what is information security? What's your definition of information security? It's the middle two letters in a chief information security officer. So we should have a definition for this. Well, information security, like I said, I've asked, I don't even know how many people, Fortune 100 companies, state CISOs, small company, mid-sized companies, other security experts, what's your definition? Sometimes we'll find that the definition is close to being the same, and sometimes the definition is wildly different. So we don't want to overlook this. The game is risk management. Information security is risk management. It's not risk elimination. That's a different game, and it's a game you can't win. I don't know if you're like me at all. I don't like playing games I can't win, and I can't win risk elimination. That's impossible. I can win risk management. That's the game I play. Hopefully that's the game you're playing along with me, and the game we're all playing together. So if the game is information security and it's managing risk to what? Well, it's unauthorized disclosure, modification, and destruction of data, which if you remember, if you've been in this game, I guess, a little bit, you know, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the CIA, this is the opposite. And the reason why it's the opposite is risk is always based on a negative outcome. There's no positive risk. That's called chance or luck or something else. But risk is always the likelihood of something bad happening and the impact if it did. These are the things that we're trying to protect against, right? Unauthorized disclosure, modification, and destruction of data. Now, our tools, the way we play the game, the things at our disposal to play are administrative, physical, and technical controls. Technically, this is different than cybersecurity. It's different than privacy, and it's certainly different than compliance. Privacy and cybersecurity actually fit within information security. So if you're playing the information security game, you can win the privacy and cybersecurity games as well. I'd love to elaborate, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. All right, so to what end? Why would I want to play this game? So we have many people, everybody actually is in this game, whether they want to be or not. It reminds me of, you know, like when you were a kid, you might have played T-ball, and there was always the kid that was in center field or right field that was not really paying attention and picking dandelions. They're in the game, but they're not playing the game. They're busy doing other things. It seems like so many of us are sort of like that. But why would I want to play? I may know that I'm already in the game, but I don't, you know, why would I play? You know, what do I get? What's in it for me? That's what many of us, you know, are asking. Well, what's in it for you is a better life. Ultimately, security and technology is so integrated into every aspect of everyday life, from our cars, from our medical devices, to our medical treatment, to our homes, home security, home entertainment, on and on and on. It's so integrated into every aspect of your life. If you want to live a better life, learn to play the game, right? If people suffer, which, you know, I made that point just, you know, a few minutes ago, if people suffer when things go wrong, inversely, wouldn't you then say people suffer less when things go right? If you're playing the game well, life goes well, right? Or better. So that's why you want to play the game. And that's why this is so critical for us to get in the game and play it right. So let's plug the CISO into this game. That's the game. Really brief introduction. We could have spent a whole bunch of time digging deeper into that, but that's the game. Let's plug the CISO in. So what does the CISO do? In our game, I like simplicity. You should like simplicity. There's one bit of wisdom you could take from this talk. It's that complexity is the worst enemy of security always. It's much easier to secure something that's simple than it is to secure something that's very complex. It's logical. So let's keep the CISO's role simple. In our game, what role does the CISO play? So keeping it as simple as possible, two things, only two. You consult the organization on making good information security risk decisions, and you implement those decisions to the best of your ability. That's what a CISO does. The CISO doesn't do all these other things that we've asked them to do. Understanding, though, that under these two simple things, consulting and implementing, a whole bunch of detail that goes on under that. But boiling it down to the most simple, this is what CISOs do, the most successful CISOs. CISOs should not make risk decisions for the organization. They're not the ones ultimately responsible for the organization. No matter how much we want them to, they can't. If the game is going to be played correctly, they can't do it. They can't assume ultimate responsibility for the success or failure of risk decisions. That's also not their role. In the traditional approach, unfortunately, CISOs are held responsible. Too often, CISOs they step in and make those risk decisions. And I think sometimes it's because it's a misunderstanding between roles. The head coach, if we're going to stick with the game analogy, take football, for instance, the head coach is ultimately responsible for the wins, right, or the losses of the team. You've got assistant coaches and you've got players and so on and so forth. Now, a CISO is almost like an assistant coach, like maybe an assistant head coach or maybe an offensive coordinator, something like that. The head coach is the one who's ultimately responsible, not the CISO, not the assistant coach. So CISO stepping in and making those risk decisions on behalf of the head coach. I get why we do it. We do it because the head coach isn't stepping up, either because they don't know they're supposed to, we don't speak their language, whatever reason. And so we want to step in, we want to help, we want to serve, but I think we do that at our detriment. So this traditional approach to information security is not the right way to play the game. Here's a great example, and I'm going to use this example because he's in my backyard, right? The state of Minnesota is where I live. I love this state. I love the people of this state. Now, Rohit is our state CISO, an amazing state CISO. So I have nothing bad at all. And another thing to point out, if we're going to build this community, based on the power of connection, don't point fingers. Don't start tearing people down, build people up. And I want to build this up because I think it's such a good example. This is from the public website, from the state of Minnesota's public website. And this is what Rohit does, right? This is our introduction. And I wanted to point out the things that I think are dead on perfect, right? Copy and paste. Guide risk decisions, enable decision makers, advise and empower decision makers. That is the role of a CISO. So I love it. I love the fact that my state CISO understands the role. Now, can he do it? That's a whole nother thing. We need to put him in a position that he can do it. And I think all of us need to do that, right? So we need to enable Rohit to succeed. And I think that's what a lot of PDEIS is about. So yes, absolutely, that's the role in the game. I love it. So CISOs consult and implement. Who do they consult? Because that's step one. I can't implement unless I've consulted or unless I understand the risk decisions you've made. So who does a CISO, a typical state CISO, no two states are the same, but who do they consult? Well, the governor, the legislature, the agencies, departments, counties, cities, commissions, municipalities, higher education, infrastructure, K-12, public. Now a CISO may not be directly, responsible for consulting these, but they certainly have an influence, right? If I make good risk, I guess if I diagnose the problem well, I can help, right? I can provide good consulting to all these various pieces in state government. And that's where we need to help the state CISO. So if that's too easy though, that seems like a pretty easy job, which it isn't. It's actually a job I don't think I would take because it is really, really hard. You take a lot of flack there. But if it's too easy, let's handicap the CISO. Let's give them staff shortages. Let's make it poorly defined roles and responsibilities. So, I'm not getting the help I need. Collaboration difficulties, turf battles, politics, you name it, no measurement. Or if I do have a measurement of where security is, it's subjective. It's not credible. And you can't manage what you can't measure. So that's an issue. Budget constraints, lack of management participation, employee turnover. We have to fix this. We have to put in a construct, put in something that outlives all of these things. And that's the system, that's programmatic, that's operational. So that when, let's say, God forbid, Rohit goes on to another position and we bring in another state CISO, do they inherit something that they can continue to manage that solves all these problems? And that's ultimately what we're working on. So if CISOs win, everybody else wins. If we play the game right, consult and implement, right? From that leadership perspective as really the chief information security person. So I'm going to put this up on the top of the slide. CISOs consult and implement. I want to keep that front and center for the rest of the presentation. And now we're going to dig in. What is this programmatic distributed empowerment for information security? Why does it work? And how can I do it? And this is just, again, the introduction. We're not going to go deep into it, but we spent a lot of time figuring out the dynamics of how state or any complex organization, security, whether they take it to a state or you take it to a huge Fortune 100 company. The problems actually are the same because I've talked to both sides, right? It's this complexity. It's this, how do I get accountability throughout the organization? Well, we took accountability, called it empowerment for one, and then put this construct in place. So the purpose of PDEIS is to improve information security effectiveness and accountability in complex environments through simplification, collaboration, and resource sharing. All good things that all capitalize on the power of this connection, right? Again, I love the Cybersecurity Summit's theme this year because it fits perfectly with what we need to focus on. All right, so at a high level, what is PDEIS? Consists of identifying entities. So a big organization is really just made up of smaller organizations, simpler organizations, ones that can be managed. So identifying entities, identifying collaborators within and between these entities, doing risk assessments. If the game is risk management, you can't manage risk without assessing it first. Empowering or enabling empowerment. Risk assessment is only one part, right? Now I need to make decisions. So empowering people to make those decisions, as opposed to me as the CISO telling you what decisions to make. You're making the decisions, and I can enable and empower those decisions to be made, or I guess carried out. And then reporting. You know, we always have somebody to report to. Where are we at? Where are we going? It's almost like a scoreboard, right? You don't go and watch a football game and not have a scoreboard. So 3 implementation phases to PDEIS and 10 implementation steps. Simple, right? Keep it simple. I want to issue a warning though. Simple doesn't mean easy, right? There's going to be a heck of a lot of work that needs to be done. I like work, and hopefully you do too. All right, so here are the phases: preparation, assessment, and empowerment. You can see the steps inside. There are 5 steps in preparation. You got to prepare well first. Do it right the first time, really is what it comes down to. So we're going to go through each one of these steps at a very high level. If you want more formality, if you want a more in-depth implementation guide with examples, specifications, what have you, ask for them. More than happy to share any of this. Formal publication is expected next month. So let me explain these. Phase 1, step 1, define your entity classification. So you're going to classify your entities. Take the state of Minnesota, for instance. We're going to use that example throughout. That doesn't mean we're doing these things necessarily. I don't want you to read more into it, but I'm using this as an example because I'm working so much with other states, Minnesota included, Minnesota, Iowa, New Jersey, Washington, North Dakota, I mean, many states trying to figure out these things. So take a state, break it down into its components, its first level of components. So define these entities, classifications, believing that a complex entity like a state is really nothing more than its simpler sub-entities. So what are my classifications? And I'll give you an example. In the state of Minnesota, or any state, no 2 states are the same, so your classifications might be different, and that's okay. I'm just defined 7 in this state. So we have agencies, including commissions, departments, boards, etc., counties, cities, higher ed, critical infrastructure, K-12, and citizens. Simple 7 classifications. That's step 1. A diagram certainly helps. People like pictures. This is what it looks like. Simple. All right, so step 2, we need to classify our sub-entities. So now we need to populate these entity classifications, these buckets, if you will, with sub-entities. What fits in there? And that's the next step. So continuing this with the state of Minnesota, agencies, 162, counties, 87, cities, 853, higher ed institutions, 43, critical infrastructure, 1124, K-12, 554, citizens, 5.64 million. List these, put these into their buckets. And if you don't, so trying to manage this, again, at a high level, it's impossible. You can't. We have to classify, we have to put our sub-entities into their classifications. And really that's what step 2 is. So it, and just to drive that point home, again, 2,823 entities and sub-entities in the state. This is work, but this is preparation. We're preparing for the structure that we're going to put in place so that we can manage all of this. A word of wisdom: don't try to get this perfect. It's never going to be perfect. The goal has never been perfection. The goal is management. The goal is improvement. Membership of each of the classifications will change, and might change a lot regularly. You'll get those in subsequent iterations of PDEIS, but at this point, do your best. So this is just the diagram populated with those numbers. How many things go into each one of these buckets? Pretty simple, again, but work. Step 3, choose the starting classification. If you're going to try to do all 7 of these classifications at the same time, that's overwhelming, especially if you've never done this before. So PDEIS, our suggestion, our recommendation is to choose 1. Now, if you're super ambitious and you think you can handle all at the same time, go for it. Just recognize you're probably going to fail. So start with 1. So in this case, we're going to start with agencies. We're going to start with these 162 agencies, boards, and commissions. And the others, we're still going to consult, as we can. But in terms of putting this structure in place, we're starting here. So just turn it green on our diagram. Again, pretty easy. So step 3 is done. Step 4. Choose a common language. Entities, people can't communicate. Nothing can communicate without a common language. Computers can't communicate without a common language. That's why we have TCP/IP, right? It's a protocol suite of language, right? Words, terms, measurements, methodologies. How are we going to communicate within the bucket of sub-entities and between buckets? We have to choose a common language. So don't get wrapped around the axle on this. Words, terms, measurements, and methodologies. Now, we did define our own common language because I don't want to preach something that we can't do. So at SecurityStudio, we did define our own common language. And for this, and you see the orange bucket that surrounds the first 5 other buckets or classifications, they speak a common language, or we can get them to speak a common language without really too much difference in dialect. So S2 org is the common language there. Pretty basic. This is just what it looks like in a tool. Now, I'm using SecurityStudio as an example. You can build this yourself if you want to as well. You're not stuck with a product, right? This is a solution, not another blinky light. So K-12 gets its own little color, and it's not because K-12 speaks a different language. They speak a different dialect. They use different words that mean sort of the same things. And I use the example of, like, down south, they call things Coke. Everything's Coke. Well, here in Minnesota, it's pop. Other places, it's soda, right? We understand what all those things mean. It's not a different language, it's a different dialect. So schools get their own sort of tool called S2 School, and same with people at home. They also speak the same language, different dialect. So that's why we built this way. And that's just what S2Me looks like. S2Me is free, absolutely free. https://s2me.io. Go take it anytime. The state of North Dakota, push that to all their state citizens. It's awesome. We're never going to charge for that. That's my word. It's recorded. It's for free. It's for citizens, it's people at home. So just to make things a little bit more, I guess, nuanced, we do have a translation, because people working at, even though people are creatures of habit, and the same habits they have at home are the same habits they bring into the office, they apply a little differently. So we do have this translation that takes place between home and work, and that's all that S2 Team is. And that's the dashboard for what S2 Team looks like in a tool. So we're almost done with preparation. The next step is to assign empowerment. So we have all these entities. Who within each of these entities is going to be empowered to, 1, to conduct risk assessments, and 2, make risk decisions. It's okay for these people to delegate the tasks, but not the responsibility, right? So in the state, maybe the commissioner of the Department of Transportation is one of those empowered folks. The commissioner of the Commerce Department, or maybe it's a body, maybe it's a board, but we need to define who's going to be empowered with each of these entities. And this is just the showing of that in a tool. Again, you can build this yourself. So that's it. We're prepared. We're ready to do something. So phase 2 is actually doing that assessment. So we're almost getting to the point where I can really consult well as a CISO. You're almost empowering me to do my job. Entities and sub-entities sometimes inherit controls from others, right? That's that resource sharing that maybe we've already got in place in some respects. Don't spend too much time on determining all these inheritance nuances. Keep it as simple as possible. And if you get it wrong, that's fine. You'll figure it out when you get to step 7. You start actually doing the assessments. But this is places where maybe we're adopting policies from other places, what have you. This is what inheritance looks like in a tool: copying, linking, and resetting phases. So linking means that if you make changes here, it propagates here. Oftentimes, this is an a parent-child relationship, but this is where it gets a lot more programmatic as well. Now let's go do the assessments. We have 3 different types of assessments because even within our classification, we've got different entities that can do different things. There are some that are more mature, that are larger. There are some that are smaller and less mature. So we start with a common ground. The common ground would be the least complex key risk indicators type of assessment. So the level 1 assessment, set the baseline there. And then as you progress, entities graduate essentially to level 2 and level 3, but you have to meet at some common area, and that's where we're doing the risk assessment. So this is just an example of what the risk assessment looks like. And at this point, you can see that things start to emerge. I can now diagnose some things. There's a score. There's a 472.19 and there's a 711.03 in this example. Why is one a 472.19? Trying to figure out why that is. Maybe there's shared resources. Maybe there's things that we can take from the 711.03. Maybe they'll share them with the other that's at 472.19. This is the magic of having that common language and the power of connection. Now I can start to see where I've got potential issues. Again, you don't build the power of connection by putting others down and beating them up. You build the power of connection by building the community. So let's get the 711, the things we learned there, and apply them to the 472, right? This becomes really, really cool. So that's it. We've now done the assessment. Phase 1, phase 2 are complete. Now I've got a whole bunch of data. I've got a whole bunch of diagnoses that I can be a better CISO, to be honest. So consult and empower. Now risk decisions need to be made. The assessment was one part. Now somebody needs to make decisions. What are we going to do about this? Right? We need to improve potentially in some areas, and we're probably good in others. So the people who make the best risk decisions are the people who are closest to the impact of those risk decisions, not the CISO. The risk decisions are really back to who did we empower? Who is the decision maker? That's who makes the risk decisions. Again, they may delegate, but they can't delegate the responsibility. So that's that. Risk decisions, essentially avoid, transfer, mitigate. What's the one I'm missing? Accept. Sorry, those are your risk decisions. So it's a fairly simple process. At that point, you've got a roadmap developed. The roadmap is awesome because it's based on fact, common language, measurement. All these things are going well. Now we also can determine where we have shared resources, or maybe there should be shared resources. We can justify budget by facts. We can determine the future state. When we're reporting up to the head coach, who may not even realize that they are the head coach, we can tell them this is the current state, this is the future state, this is when we're going to get there, and this is how much it's going to cost. That's what we want them to stay focused on. And that also opens the door for the connection there, right? So step 9 is pretty awesome. And this is just an example of what the roadmap looks like. Fairly simple. Now, step 10, the last step in implementation. Everyone knows the plan at this point. Responsibilities are assigned. The CISO can truly coach and help implement. Ultimate, sub-entity progress can be tracked. Support is provided. All these things are great, and we're on the path to better security. This is an example of what that looks like, tracking over time. Hopefully yours isn't quite that lumpy and it's more linear. All right, so at that point, we've done the first iteration of PDEIS on the first classification of sub-entity. Now what? Move on to the next sub-entity, maybe counties in this instance, and celebrate. You just did something really cool and everybody's going to benefit for it. So securing a complex environment, really, really difficult, but it can be done. PDEIS was developed for this purpose, and we invite everyone to participate with us. Let's put everyone in a better position to win. We did use SecurityStudio in this example. I want to make sure that you know I'm not here to sell you anything. You can do this on your own with or without SecurityStudio. Thank you. Special thanks to Eileen Manning and the entire Cybersecurity Summit crew. Awesome job. There was a lot that went into this. If you want to get in contact with me, that's where you can find me. SecurityStudio, that's where you can find that. Thanks so much. Talk to you later.